50 years ago this year. The Darling Downs Institute of Advanced Education, as it was back then, graduated its first batch of new teachers onto classrooms of Australia from its newly introduced Diploma of Teaching course. And there is a reunion happening later this year to get that class of 75 back together. And I'll give you details on that, particularly who they're still trying to track down. I also caught up with some of those graduating members to find out why being part of that first class was such a unique and groundbreaking experience.
It was very new for all of us, the lecturers and the students alike, because we were the first group to enrol in that Diploma in Teaching primary, and a lot of the lecturing staff, it was their first appointment as lecturers at a tertiary institution too.
We were aware that we were the first cohort, and we were aware that we were pioneering, and so were the lecturers. Years later they said we always remember that first group because they taught us, the lecturers as much as they taught us. To compare, my wife started the course 2 years after me, and she had none of that feeling whatsoever. As far as she was concerned, she was walking into an established course, whereas we didn't have that feeling at all, mainly because they were building the buildings around us too. And by the time she came along, she walked in and all those things were there. And there's a fair bit of pride in that, being that first.
It was 50 years ago. The first cohort of primary school teachers were given their diplomas in teaching from what was then the Darling Downs Institute of Advanced Education. These days, it's the University of Southern Queensland, with campuses not just in Toowoomba, but in Ipswich and Springfield in outer Brisbane. But back then, as one by one, the first offices, libraries and lecture halls were slowly built around them. The class of 75 were taught their craft inside demountable classrooms on a campus that seemed like it was just clinging to the edge of the fledgling city of Toowoomba.
I guess it seemed like a little bit of an adventure at the time because it was new for us and new for everybody else. We were all starting at the same level and we're travelling along the road together.
They were teachers and principals. They weren't established academics. They became academics as a result of those first few years, and they went on to get their doctorates and masters and whatnot. A lot of them had just had their teaching degree and had to come straight from school, and I think that is a significant difference to even to later on. They weren't academics, full stop.
The DDIAE may have been a new place of learning, but the lecturers and their leaders were determined to produce a new type of teacher.
It's worth emphasising the difference in culture from the teachers, and they were called teachers' colleges down there in Brisbane. They were producing those traditional teachers. The goal here from day one was to look at a different approach to teaching, and we were aware of that. Every lecturer was determined that we're going to break new ground on this, and they took every advantage of that, and those people have got to be given credit for that. People like Len Postle from the very beginning, Ron Skilton, all of those people, they came out of their schools and said we want a different type of teacher, and that's what they got.
I think we learnt to be independent educators. We didn't learn a pro forma, this is what you do on day one, that's what you do at the end of the week, this is what you do at the end of the term. We were very much given the opportunity to develop ourselves as professionals, certainly within guidelines, but a lot of the emphasis was on being independent, learning on the job with the students, and I think that shaped us as people to develop a love of learning and to give others the opportunity to learn to love learning.
We became lifelong learners.
I think the one thing that I especially remember is being encouraged to think differently. We had a lot of sociology and different kind of lecturers and so forth, and they always encouraged us to think beyond what was being presented. And one push that I really think has made a difference is that we were sort of introduced to hands-on learning, and up until then I don't think there'd been a lot of hands-on learning, meaning that the children had things to manipulate and to help them understand what they were doing. And I took it that that was pretty new and that we were sort of pioneering that.
When the Darling Downs Institute of Advanced Education offered Diploma in Teaching, it meant for the first time ever, school leavers from Toowoomba and further west who wanted to become teachers didn't have to move to Brisbane to study. For some of those first student teachers, it simply meant they could stay at home while studying. But for others, being able to study in Toowoomba was the difference between taking whatever job they could find when they left school and the teaching career that they'd only dreamt of.
I would never have gone to Brisbane, full stop. It would never have happened. We were brought up on a property about 3 hours west of Toowoomba, and my intention was to go back on the property after year 12. I'd private board in Toowoomba in year 12 at Harristown, and so we were aware that there was a building going on out there, but I went back to the property, and then in the middle of the Christmas holidays, a scholarship arrived in the mail, and for the next 40 years.
Your dad was disappointed?
No, he was happy. He was the type of person who, whatever we wanted, he was happy for me to go back in the farm and certainly happy for me to do this.
I was from a property northeast of St George, and it was simply too far, too expensive to even consider something in Brisbane, so it was a bit of a saviour for me. Mapped out the rest of my existence, and then later on, 11 years after graduation, I commenced as a part-time staff member off campus of the university.
Wow.
It was still DDIAE when I began, so 23 years of association then with the DDIAE/USQ.
Of course, just like the schools their students were about to be sent out to, educational institutes and university campuses offer more chances to learn than just inside the classroom and the libraries and the lecture halls. They're a place where people meet like-minded souls, open themselves to new ideas and different opinions, find their tribe.
My wife and I loved our time out there because of that culture. We were living on campus, both of us at MacGregor College, and living with that group. And I was a bit disappointed that my children, when they went back to the DDIAE, did most of their learning online, and they missed that culture completely. And I thought that's just sad. But I mean, you know, what you don't know, you don't miss. It goes beyond friendship. It is just that unifying culture of being at the same place and, you know, suffering the same.
But for others, not as much.
I've spoken to some of the other people I've been to college with recently, and we all seem to agree that we went to college, we did what we had to do, then we went home and worked. Okay. We didn't tend to socialise all that much, but having lived in Toowoomba, I guess I had other avenues I could socialise in anyway, but we didn't tend to stay at college overly long, just socialising.
So later this year, the class of 75, that first band of newly minted primary school teachers to graduate from the Darling Downs Institute of Advanced Education's first Diploma in Teaching course, will gather to mark the 50th anniversary of their graduation. In 1975, the place was so new that there was nowhere on the entire campus big enough to hold a graduation ceremony. So they received their coveted diplomas in the nearest high school hall. But looking back, it sounds like most of the graduates saw it all as just part of the big adventure.
We obviously didn't just graduate as a school, there were other schools too, like science, engineering, business, and there was just no facility on campus to accommodate those sorts of numbers and visitors and dignitaries. So we graduated from Harristown State High School's hall. That was our venue.
Well, I've graduated from USQ 7 times, so I didn't go to that one. And I was out at Enrol, teaching west of Emerald at the time, so I didn't drive back for it. So
we'd already been out teaching for a term already, and we had actually come back to graduate. I don't have a lot of vivid memories. There was no official photographer there, so if you had a photo taken, it was taken by a family friend. We're entitled to invite 3 people, weren't we? Or was it 2? 2
I
or
don't
3.
remember the number.
But it said there were refreshments at the back of the hall, which I don't remember. But we just came and we did it and we moved on.
Yeah, members of the Diploma of Teaching's class of 75, Tom Otto, Anne Huth and Narelle McIntyre there. And they're still chasing Paula Allen, Frances Grundy, Anne McNamara, Janet Nelson, Joanne Sherwin and Janelle Arbach. If you know those people, get them to get in touch. Give us a call here at the station. We'll pass the details on. It's 10 o'clock.